Hi guys, welcome to another video. As I'm sure you know, there's a brand new Space Marine Codex out, and so this is going to be my first video about that. Unlike most codices, as is the plural, you can't really just dive in and look at the different units and what they're strong with, what they're good at, and all that sort of thing, because there's so many different combinations presented in this latest codex that what works with one combination might not work as well with another. So when rating effectiveness of different units and so forth, you need to know basically what kind of army you're actually fielding first. And I have to say, this codex is very good at basically breaking down the massive amount of Space Marine players out there, breaking them into smaller kind of distinct chunks, so opponents playing against Space Marines shouldn't find it boring or anything like that. You don't know what you're going to face when you're facing Space Marines. It could be something completely different now, and that's pretty good. Now, I was a bit worried to start with, and basically we're talking about the chapter tactics options. I was worried to start with that it may railroad players into a certain kind of playstyle. So, for example, Imperial Fists, their chapter tactics favour Devastators. So, if you played Imperial Fists, you feel like you should have lots of Devastators, because, that's when you get the benefits. And I was kind of worried that that kind of thing is a bit restrictive, even when it's not supposed to be. But if someone wants to play a different kind of chapter tactic that suits their army, even if they're painted as Imperial Fists, I don't mind, and nor should anyone else at the end of the day, because can you really expect someone to go out and literally change their collection of models, which can cost hundreds and hundreds of pounds, purely to have a competitive element to their army? No, I don't think that's reasonable. So, with the assumption then that you can take any kind of chapter tactic you want, I'm going to go through them all. And I've heard a lot of bitching, to be honest, about them so far. A lot of people seem to think that some are really powerful, some aren't powerful at all, and not always the kind of ways you'd expect. So I'm going to say that basically, from what I've seen, at least, I haven't play tested yet, I'm play testing tonight. From what I've seen so far, all of them are very good in their own ways, and I think everyone will find something that suits them. So, without further ado, we'll start. Excuse me. The first one I'm going to talk about is Imperial Fists, since I've already mentioned them. Okay, so what does Imperial Fist chapter tactics give you? It gives you Bolter Drill, which basically any model in a detachment, and this never applies to vehicles, by the way, because they don't have chapter tactics, so it only ever applies to like infantry or monstrous creatures, that kind of thing. Not that there is any in Space Marines, but whatever. So yeah, Bolter Drill basically means any kind of bolt gun, so bolt pistols, bolters, storm bolters, or heavy bolters, or even combi weapons where you're using the bolt gun part, gets a reroll 1s to hit. So that's actually quite similar to Sisters of Battle, with the Battle Sisters, because they get that through their Act of Faith. So what this basically means is it's going to increase the amount you hit with your bolt guns, and of course as a result it will directly affect the amount of wounds you're causing. So it will make your general rank and file, or any kind of bolt guns you have on infantry, slightly more killy. Now obviously this won't apply to bikes, because they're twin linked already. Anything that's already twin linked is not really going to affect that much. And the big thing that kind of lets this down slightly is it doesn't work on Stern Guard. So in practice it's okay, but I don't think this particular thing is going to be that effective as its own thing, and people seem to think it will be, but honestly, how many bolters do you actually use? And I'm not on about take, I'm on about use in a game. Okay, People don't really take heavy bolters, and if they do, it's very, very rarely on infantry models. And now, of course, you have to pay for them. You don't get the free ones on tactical squads or anything like that. Okay. People don't really fire the bolters that much, except with certain elements of tactical squads, and then again, they're kind of there really for the special weapons. And any other kind of bolters that really get fired tend to be on vehicles, like hurricane bolters and storm bolters, that kind of thing. And of course, the only bolters that people really, really wanted in their army were the Sternguard bolters, which this doesn't affect. So, even though it's nice, and it even makes Overwatch slightly better, I mean, ever so slightly, but you know, it's a boost, I don't see it being that effective. And also, it kind of doesn't really work for Crimson Fists, because obviously the whole thing with Pedro Cantor is that they can take Sternguard as scoring, so lots of Sternguard, that kind of thing, and if it doesn't work for them, then they're kind of losing out on that benefit somewhat. So, nice, but not amazing, you know. The other thing they get is Siege Masters, and basically this applies to any kind of Devastator, so including the new Centurion Devastators. They all get Tank Hunters, and they also all get +1 to the building damage table when rolling on that. That's nice. I honestly don't think I've ever had to shoot at a building in my entire time playing. I'm actually the only one who seems to take a building, and even then it rarely gets shot at, but you know, it's nice. I don't think it's that big a thing. The Tank Hunters is obviously the main thing. What this means is you can actually end up taking, you know, to maximise these two things, you could take lots of devs, which obviously benefit from, and if you're worried about the cost of the heavy weapons, I wouldn't, because what you can actually do is not take the heavy option on tactical squads, and instead use those points to take the heavy option on the Devastators, because of course now they cost the exact same amount of points per unit. And what does that mean for your tactical squad without the heavy weapon? Well, you can now run it as one big squad with extra bolters in a Rhino and get the effective bolter drill up front in the enemy's face. So you're getting the best of both worlds there, and I think you might see people kind of leaning that way. So big squads of tactical squads with bolters and special weapons, and then of course Devastators just loaded out with the best heavy weapons. I would personally favour the las cannons, because then they can they can kill any kind of armour, and of course if Tank Hunters, you've got a good chance of taking out AV-14 as well. So that's pretty good. The other thing is that, of course, Tank Hunters also works on gun emplacements, so quad guns, Icarus las cannons, that kind of thing. So it works very well against flyers. So worth considering there. Yeah, so that's Imperial Fist basically. So, as I say, it's going to affect the way you build your army, or if you have a certain build already, you'll favour certain things. But you know, just by changing things around slightly, you're going to end up with a more effective kind of force, just by shifting things around a few points here and there. So yeah, next one I'm going to talk about is Salamanders. Salamanders are fairly similar to before, except now you don't need to take Vulcan anymore to get the benefits to Flamers. So what happens is they get Flamecraft, which is basically twin links their Flamers. They get to reroll to wound and reroll for armor penetration with flame templates. Now, what's really good with this is not only does it do what Vulcan used to do, but it also says flame templates. It doesn't specify like the old one did with heavy flamer, combi flamer only. Basically what that means is it now works on Firestorm cannons. So Land Raider Redeemer is now twin linked. That's pretty good. The other thing it does is you get to re-roll your saves against wounds caused by flamer templates against you. So any kind of flamers put on you, they go through to wound something, you fail a few saves, well, you get to re-roll those ones you failed. So that means you're going to be much, much more survivable. How many other armies use flamers? Not that much, I find, apart from Sisters of Battle, of course. I'm a huge fan of flamers personally, so I use lots. But in my experience, I've had very few used against me. The big thing, of course, is Helldrakes. Now remember, flamers ignore cover, and of course Helldrakes are AP free with their Bale Flamers, so they'd ignore your armor too. So you're thinking, oh, it's useless, but not necessarily, because you could cast the Divination 4-up Invulnerable on the unit, or maybe they've already got an Invulnerable save, or maybe you just put them all on a Sky Shield landing pad for the 4-up Invulnerable save, and then all those saves are re-rollable, because it's re-roll failed saves, not armor saves or cover saves. It's all kind of saves. So that means you can actually resist a Helldrake pretty damn well. So if you know someone who's been bothering you a lot with lots of Helldrake spam, you've suddenly got a hard counter to that. So nice to have. The other thing which is nice for Salamanders, and I really like this one, is basically each character can make one of their weapons mastercrafted. So, you know, this is better than before, where it used to be Vulcan made all Thunderhammers mastercrafted. This is actually now cheaper, because now your power sword can be mastercrafted, any kind of power weapon, any kind of close combat weapon, any kind of ranged weapon. So try and think outside the box. I mean, even if you take a Burbone Sergeant, you can mastercraft his bolt gun, for example. Got more chance of getting a precision strike on there. Or even grenades. You could mastercraft his crack grenades. Strength 6 AP4, re-rolling to hit. I think that's pretty good. You also have... You can take it on things like melter bombs, which is nice, because if you're like me and that one thing of melter bombs tends to miss, even though you need a 3 to hit often, you know, it's nice to be able to re-roll that. So yeah, it's just nice to have, and no extra cost. So, you know, Salamanders are going to be pretty good, I think, especially if you were running them before. They basically got better. So yep, enough about them. Iron Hands. Iron Hands have a rule called The Flesh is Weak, and most people have probably heard of this one already. Basically, every single model, excluding vehicles, of course, have Feel No Pain over 6+. So this doesn't stack with current Feel No Pain, it just replaces it if it's better. So if you have an Apothecary, then obviously you won't get the benefits of the 6+ Feel No Pain. But if you consider that every single tactical marine, every single scout, anything like that has Feel No Pain now with 6+. Don't forget, Feel No Pain is technically an invulnerable save that you get to take after other saves. And okay, if you're getting hit by instant death weapons, it's not that effective, but think about it, right? Rank and file troops getting hit by instant death weapons doesn't happen that often. People save them for the big characters. Okay, and even if they do get hit by instant death weapons, there's only a few out there that are going to hit the volume needed to actually deal with this Feel No Pain. So basically this is going to make everything so much more survivable. And of course it works on characters, and the other benefit of Iron Hands is the Machine Empathy rule, which gives it will not die to characters, so they can regain wounds. That's pretty good. If you factor in that some characters have an invulnerable save, you can get a pretty good invulnerable save now. Multiple wounds, you can get them quite high toughness, 6+ Feel No Pain, and it will not die. Basically, the Iron Hands rules benefit incredibly brutal characters, you know, like big beat stick guys who can just charge in there, wreck face, and they're going to be a nightmare for your opponent to deal with. Absolute nightmare. The other thing, of course, is that It Will Not Die also works on vehicles, even though they don't have the chapter tactics rule. It specifically says it works on them. So, of course, all your Land Raiders and so forth, all your Storm Ravens, Storm Talons, everything, even the Rhinos, are going to be regaining hull points. That's massive. It's huge. And also, Tech Marines and Masters of the Forge get +1 to Blessing of the Omnissiah. And of course, that also applies to Thunderfire cannons. So, you know, basically, all Tech Marines are more effective. You can shove them in transports, you can shove them in your Land Raider or Storm Raven. It's going to be so hard to kill. So hard to kill. And of course, all your characters are out there wrecking face. All your rank and file are incredibly hard to shift. Iron Hands are obviously going to favour the big armour heavy units, but they're going to be really hard to kill. I think people will like them particularly with smaller elite armies. But, you know, if you play defensively, that kind of thing, they're going to really suit you. So, also, we have Raven Guard, which is the next one. Now, this is the one that most people seem to think kind of sucks. And the reason is, they have a rule called Strike from the Shadows. And basically, it gives models in the detachment the Scout special rule, and Stealth special rule on the first game turn. So that sounds good, but the thing that puts people off, I think, is that it doesn't include units with bulky or very bulky special rules. So no Terminators, no jump pack infantry, no Centurions, obviously. So they don't get Stealth and they don't get Scout. Now people are thinking Raven Guard are all about jump packs, and they don't get their own special rule benefits. Doesn't make much sense on the face of it. But then you have to kind of think about it. Okay, what does get these rules? Okay, and the first thing that leaps to mind is bikes. Bikes aren't bulky or very bulky. They don't have that rule. That means they get Stealth, so that's +1 to their Jink. Okay, if they go flat out, they're suddenly got a 3-up cover save. They get Scout, so that's 12 inches immediately in the first thing. You can redeploy 12 inches and then move 12 inches in their movement phase if you're going first, or they can outflank with their special weapons. That's incredibly dangerous for the enemy. Scouts also applies to tactical marines now. So before, where you could outflank scouts, that kind of thing, try and get line breaker, grab an objective, contest an objective, you can now do that with tacticals, which are much harder, can take more special weapons, can put heavy weapons in the opponent's backfield. It gives you so much more options, and of course they can also take dedicated transports, which means they get the Scout rules. So suddenly you can put them in Rhinos, moving 12 to start with, Razorbacks even. Heavy Flamer Razorback suddenly got a lot better. You know, outflank those things. All sorts of hassle for your opponent, okay? And the other special rule they get is that you get Wing Deliverance, and this does apply to jump infantry models, and only jump infantry models. And basically, you get to use your jump pack in the movement and assault phase. So you can move your 12-inch jump as usual, and in the assault phase, you still get to re-roll your assault distance, which is always really nice for assault marines especially, and you get to re-roll failed wound rolls caused by Hammer of Wrath. And of course you will get Hammer of Wrath because you're using your jump pack in the assault phase as well. So that's pretty nice as well. So it makes them much more effective, much punchier, and of course they're always going to get into combat unless you're very, very unlucky. So what does this mean? It basically means Raven Guard is split up into two sections that benefits both parts of your army. And it also kind of favours big squads of simple units to kind of sweep across the field. So let me explain. Let me just give you an example. Okay, you got lots of tactical squads. Okay, they all have Scout, they all have Stealth. So you break them up into combat squads. Some of them go into Rhinos. They have the special weapons, the Sarge with a combi weapon, that kind of thing. Okay, they go into reserves. They're going to outflank. Everyone else with their heavy weapons sits back. They have Stealth for the first turn, so sit them in cover, you know, 3-up cover save, really nice. They can shoot, you know, it protects them for the first turn. Okay. Now, if you have the first turn and you don't want to outflank the other tacticals, you can shove them in the rhinos or something. Scout everything forward. Scout bikes. Take a captain on a bike. Use them as troops. Okay. Scout them all forward. Suddenly you've got this huge wall. First turn, go flat out again. Everything shoots forward. Right in the opponent's face. Turn 1. Anything does shoot at your backfield, you've got the stealth. Everything else, right in their face, you know, that's a lot to deal with, okay? And then behind them, you have your jump packs, okay? With all those things combined, are they going to want to kill the jump packs, or are they going to want to kill all the bikes and tacticals who are right in their face using special weapons? You know? They may go for the jump packs, but then you've still got a lot of problems to deal with. And the thing is, what the jump packs do is then sweep across behind and basically kill the stragglers. They are more of a hammer blow because they got more killy. And now you can take Vanguard veterans as well, and it applies to them. That's a big punch you can put in there, you know. Just sweep behind, clearing up the debris of the initial scouting forces. And it's just like a huge sweep of simple units. I don't think it favours tanks or anything like that. Vehicles. You're better off basically having lots of infantry and fast moving jump packs and bikes basically. But I think that could be very, very effective, especially if we've got so much outflanking stuff. It's incredibly dangerous. Anyone who plays Sisters of Battle knows how good Dominions are, and they're essentially the same kind of thing, but now you can suddenly get that on all your infantry, apart from jump packs, who have enough tricks of their own. So I think that's going to end up being really, really powerful. Right, next one, because I talked about Raven Guard way too much, is White Scars. White Scars' personal favourite as an army. The chapter traits are quite similar to Raven Guard in a sense. Basically, they have a rule called Born in the Saddle. And that's any unit that are bikes automatically pass dangerous terrain. They get +1 to Jink, and also +1 strength on Hammer of Wrath attacks. That's fairly straightforward. You know, you're more survivable like the Raven Guard bikes would be. But also you don't take dangerous terrain tests, which is very, very nice. You know, so you don't have to worry about just going straight through difficult terrain, powering towards your opponent flat out, straightforward. And of course, +1 strength on Hammer of Wrath is nice, strength 5. The next thing is Fight on the Move. And this is the really big one for White Scars. Basically, everything except Terminators and Centurions gets hit and run. And if you've never used the hit and run rule, I can tell you it's really, really good. Basically what this means is, after you've been in assault, whether you charged in or not, or the chances are you will have charged in with bikes, you got those Hammer of Wrath hits. What this means is, at the end of your opponent's assault phase, when they've been tied up, you can hit and run away. You take an initiative test, you move away, and then suddenly you can shoot again and charge again. And it's kind of like a wave hitting the opponent's lines until they die, eroding them away. Because obviously Space Marines are a shooting kind of force, and this is very nice to have. Now the other thing is, unlike failing a morale test, they can't catch you and destroy you. As long as you pass your initiative test, you're away. Okay. Excuse me. The other thing is, obviously this applies to things like tactical marines and scouts, and basically anything. It also applies to jump infantry as well. Hit and run on jump infantry is very, very nice. So both White Scars and Raven Guard have a kind of crossover with each other there, where you wouldn't expect it, but they benefit the kind of distinctive units of each other's army. Excuse me. So yeah, really, really good to get out of combat. And the other massive thing about hit and run is it lets you run 3d6 inches in any direction, so you're not falling straight back to table edge, you can move anywhere. That's a free move you're getting. And also, it ignores difficult terrain. But if you're doing it with your bikes, they already ignore dangerous terrain. So you can literally just go anywhere, in any direction, 3d6 inches. And then of course it's your turn after, so you got that over 12. You can go so fast. Tie up things when you need to and move away. It's going to be huge. You know, that is a really, really good power to have. And on everything, I mean, usually you're paying a premium for that kind of thing in 40k. So that is a huge one. Right. Last one I'm going to talk about, and I'll explain why in a bit. Ultramarines. This is the one most people will probably try using to start with. And it's also the one I'm going to be using tonight. Ultramarines are a bit different. They got something called combat doctrines. And because they're supposed to be a flexible kind of fighting force, they kind of favour a balanced kind of army. So what it is you get 3 doctrines. You've got tactical doctrine, assault doctrine, and devastating doctrine. And at the start of your turn, you basically go, right, I'm going to use the tactical doctrine or the assault doctrine. You know, you can pick which one you want to use. And then it lasts until the beginning of your next turn. So it lasts for a full game turn, basically. And each one gives different kind of benefits to the army. So, first off, tactical doctrine. All the models in the detachment, obviously not vehicles, re-roll to hit rolls of 1 in the shooting phase. So that means everything from Devastators to Centurions to Terminators to, well, bikes, it doesn't really matter, but you know, anything like that re-rolls hits of 1. So that's already slight, you know, that is better than the Imperial Fist one, as you can see. The other thing this does is all models in tactical squads re-roll failed to hit rolls made in the shooting phase. So basically it twin links their weapons for the phase. Sorry, for the turn, because obviously there's Overwatch. Yeah, so that twin links tactical weapons, including the heavies, including the specials. Not flamers though, sadly. And of course, everything else rerolls once to hit. So you can see that is more powerful than the Imperial Fist one. But of course, it's limited to 1 use per turn. Sorry, 1 use per game for a turn. So you have to choose when to use it. And you know, but it's good to have that. It really does depend on your army build when you use that. My initial plan is I'm going to use it the very first turn, and the reason is I'm going to have a lot of tactical squads with heavy weapons set in the back, and I want them to be able to kill things as early as possible. So might as well use that. Everything else gets to reroll hits to 1 as well, so that's nice to have. I'm not so bothered about the bolters rerolling to hit, as I said. I don't think it's going to be that useful. Yeah, so anyway. Assault Doctrine. Basically, you can re-roll charge range, which is nice. That's on everything. Again, that includes Terminators, so bear that in mind. Models in a detachment's assault squads, yeah, bike squads, and attack bike squads instead have fleet. So that means they don't get to re-roll their charge range, but they do have fleet. Now, fleet on bikes and attack bikes is obviously pointless for running. It's nice to have on assault squads because, you know, you get to re-roll that distance. What obviously this does is it does let you re-roll charge range instead. And you're thinking, why bother? Well, obviously fleet is slightly better because you can just choose to re-roll 1 dice if you want instead of both. So it's basically when you're doing a mass charge or a very important charge that must get in, this is the one to call. You know, yeah. So again, nice to have. Very situational, but you know, very very good to have. The last one is Devastating Doctrine. Basically, you get to re-roll to hit with snapshots, and that includes Overwatch. Okay, think about that. Snapshots, you know, moving and shooting with heavy weapons. obviously Overwatch if you're about to get charged, but also shooting at flyers. If there's flyers really annoying you, you've got a lot of heavy weapons dotted around, go for it, you know, do that. The other thing it does is it gives your Devastator squads the Relentless special rule, so long as they don't disembark from a transport in that movement phase. Now I can see why they did that, and the reason is obviously you don't want people charging forward in a Rhino or whatever, getting out and then unleashing God knows what onto the enemy, like from the back or whatever. So I can see why they did that. The difference is Relentless on Devastator squads isn't that useful if you think about it. The shortest range thing you have on a Devastator squad, well, the shortest range heavy weapon anyway, is the heavy bolter, which is okay at snapshots anyway, and the plasma cannon. Both of those are 36 inches of range, okay, which is usually plenty. All you're going to be doing with Relentless is moving an extra 6. Now, if you need to redeploy, for some reason, if things are coming at you, you know, you need to move, then it's nice. You can kind of redeploy slightly, but again, it's only slightly, and I don't think it's that useful in that sense. But purely to re-roll snapshots, that's still a nice one to have. Overall, I'd say the Tactical Doctrine is probably the most effective here, but Assault definitely has its place depending on your army list. And Devastator, again, if you have lots of Devastators, you may think of it. Perhaps there's something I haven't thought of here for the Relentless Devastators. Personally, I don't think it'll be as useful as people think. Still nice to have, but again, how useful is it in context of the game? I don't think it's going to be that useful. You know, if you deploy correctly, then they shouldn't have to move anyway. So yeah, that is basically it. As my own personal favourite, I'm thinking Iron Hands is going to be quite powerful. Raven Guard again will suit my kind of army lists, but I'm going to try Ultramarines first. Basically, it's kind of finding one that I sit well with, and also that kind of reflects the way I play my army. I'll give them all a try at some point. Salamander's going to be fun, but it always was, you know. So there you go. Now the other thing is, there's also Black Templars chapter tactics. Now, basically, I'm not going to go over that yet, and the reason is I don't know Black Templars well at all. I have the old Codex. Obviously, I have the new rules here in front of me. I haven't had a chance to read them yet, and you know, I don't think I could do them justice to talk about them yet, but I am going to in the near future, as soon as I get my head around it, because just a quick glance, they seem like they're going to be pretty damn good. And you know, people say Assault is dead in 6th edition. I completely disagree. Most of my victories are won through assaults with either armies. I think that with the new kind of Raven Guard, White Scars, and Black Templar special rules in particular, I think assault armies can be very, very effective for Space Marines now. So yeah, but as I say, I'll go over that later. Now, the one thing bearing in mind about Black Templars is, from a Black Templar perspective, they've been rolled into the Codex, and that's good and bad. They're, you know, they're slightly less distinctive as they were before, but as a result they get all the toys that Space Marines get as well. So, you know, that's a boost for them at the end of the day, and they still get to master their own kind of thing. But think about it from a Space Marine player's perspective, it's also very, very good for us, because basically what that's giving you is all the tricks and skills that Black Templars could employ, and it's another option for you to take. So definitely worth bearing in mind. So yeah, that is basically it. As I say, I'll go over Black Templars later. I know this is quite a long video, but you know there's a lot to go over. I'm going to have more videos soon. Going to be go for the Warlord traits, also the special war gear that's out now, how it can best be employed, that kind of thing. And after that, after I've had a few more games under my belt, I'm going to kind of dive into the meat of it, the individual units, HQ characters, that kind of thing, specific builds, that kind of thing. So hopefully this was useful for you. Please feel free to subscribe, comment, that kind of thing, and I'll have more videos up shortly. So thanks for watching.